So we're going to do a little bit of anatomy for the brain. So obviously this is the 3-plane localizer. You can see the 5 axial images, the 5 sagittal images, and the coronal images. So let's take a look at the Sagittal T1. Here we have the pinna, or the external ear, as well as the external auditory meatus right there, the ear hole leading to the tympanic cavity, or the middle ear basically. Over here you could see the mandibular fossa and articular eminence, as well as the condyloid process of the mandible forming the TMJ. And over here we could see the parietal lobes. So now we could see the temporal lobe coming in with the lateral fissure separating the temporal lobe from the parietal lobe and the frontal lobe. Down here we could see the cerebellum. Here we have the globe of the eye. As we scroll through, we could just now start to see the hippocampus right in here. This resides on the medial aspect of the temporal lobe, so it would be right here, hippocampus, with the amygdala down here on the bottom, and you like to get that fishtail as well in your coverage. Here we could see the lateral rectus muscle, maxillary sinuses, the teeth obviously. Let's see what other structures we could see. Frontal sinuses are visualized, levator palpebrae muscles right here, responsible for eyelid movement right there. Sphenoid sinus right here. Cerebellum coming into plane, as well as the corpus callosum. You can see the occipital, parietal, and frontal lobes, cerebellum, the pineal. So here, this is midline right here, so you could always tell because the corpus is always a slightly different color, and you can see the brainstem very well, and that it's continuous with the spinal cord. So right here in particular, you could see a lot of different structures. You could see the rostrum, the genu, the body, and the splenium of the corpus right in, let's see if I could find it. I guess it's right here. This is the fornix right there up top. Right here is the thalamus. Back here, this region with the pineal gland, right here, pineal gland. This is all referred to as the epithalamus. And down here is all the hypothalamus, where we could see the mammillary bodies, the optic chiasm, where the optic nerves converge, and you can see the pituitary gland right here as well. This right here, a little difficult to see, but you could see the infundibulum, or the pituitary gland stalk, the pituitary stalk, and the pituitary gland right here residing within the sella turcica. Right here you could see the dorsum sella right here, the posterior aspect of the body of the sphenoid bone forming the posterior sella turcica, and you might be able to see the anterior clinoid processes forming the anterior aspect of the sella turcica. It doesn't look like it, but here we could follow the optic chiasm, and you can see the nerves. Okay, so you could literally follow that all the way through. Okay, so back to midline. This right here, this dark structure in here would be the lateral ventricle, all in here. Foramen of Monroe, right there. Okay, now that courses down here into the third ventricle, which is like in here, give or take. It's in the hypothalamus. And then the third ventricle courses through the cerebral aqueduct all the way to the fourth ventricle, which resides in between the cerebellum and the tegmentum, connecting the 3 components of the brainstem together on the posterior aspect. So tegmentum back here, you have the medulla oblongata, the pons, the midbrain. Up here on the posterior aspect of the midbrain, you have the tectum, not the tegmentum, but the tectum, which has 2 rounded protrusions on the top and on the bottom. You have this superior colliculi and the inferior colliculi down here. Over here we could see the tentorium cerebelli, that dural fold that forms a tent over the cerebellum, very similar to that of the falx cerebri. However, it separates the body into superior and inferior components, or compartments, let's put it that way. Here we have the prepontine cistern, suprasellar cistern, cisterna magna down here, a couple others. And you can see at midline we get a little bit of motion artifact up here. That's all from the superior sagittal sinus, which courses along this way and drains into the confluence of sinuses back here at this rounded, or this little projection known as the internal occipital protuberance. Let's see what else we can find. So there's that hippocampus with the amygdala down here. You want to get the little fishtail right there, normally. But here's that right there, residing within the parahippocampal gyrus, the medial aspect of the temporal lobe. Let's go into the coronal. Let's take a look. Here you can see the frontal sinuses a little bit right there. Osteomeatal complex right there. You can see the maxillary sinuses right here, the globes of the eyes, the frontal lobes. You can see the longitudinal fissure with the falx cerebri within it, separates the brain into left and right cerebral hemispheres. Looks like a tiny bit of motion artifact. In here you can see the extraocular muscles. You can see the lateral, medial, superior and inferior rectus muscles right there with the optic nerve in the middle. So you can almost follow it, kind of lose track of it there, but then you can see it in here. And then there's that optic chiasm right there. Now here, let's take a look. Frontal lobes, parietal lobes, and temporal lobes are in between. Let's see if I can find those right here. Temporal lobes, so these little fissures right here, this is the longitudinal fissure with the falx cerebri within it right here. These are the lateral or sylvian fissures, which separate the parietal lobes from the temporal lobes. We have gray matter on the outside, white matter on the inside. Even though the superior is gray, it's actually white. This structure right here is the corpus callosum, connecting the cerebral hemispheres. Up here, right in here, would be the superior sagittal sinus coursing across the back of the brain, through the top of the brain like an inverted mohawk. It's on the top of the inverted mohawk. Here we can see the cerebellum with the vermis right here connecting the two. Let's see, what else can we see? IACs right here. You can see the cochlea, I believe, and a semicircular canal, or vice versa. Let's see, right here looks like the pons, perhaps. Yep, the pons. So this all right here would be the tentorium cerebelli up there, separating the cerebrum from the cerebellum, and then you have the falx cerebri right here, which separates left and right cerebral hemispheres. And right where they converge, right here, is the confluence of sinuses. That's where the straight sinus and the superior sagittal sinus converge, and they give way or pass venous blood to the transverse sinuses, which course laterally. Okay, you also have your caudate and lentiform nuclei, which I can't really find very well in here, so we'll move on. Move on to an axial T2. Here we have those condyloid processes of the mandible. The coronoid would be like up here, the coronoid processes, but can't find those here. The condyloid processes, which form the TMJ. Here we can see the basilar artery, carotid arteries right there, so you know that the circle of Willis will be right around there. All of this is the osteomeatal complex, maxillary sinuses, inferior rectus muscles right there, globes of the eyes, and you can even see the lens right there. Remember, this has aqueous humor and anteriorly and vitreous humor posteriorly, and aqueous humor anteriorly, vitreous humor posteriorly, with the lens being that primary dividing structure. We have ethmoid air cells in here. The largest are typically the ethmoid bulla. Here we could see the IACs. Not a very good image, but that's okay. This right here, it is not with contrast. Keep that in mind. All of our sequences were without. So in here you can see the IACs, which transmits cranial nerves 7 and 8, the facial nerve and the vestibulocochlear nerve. Cannot really well visualize the vestibular cochlea. So here we have the temporal lobes. Let's see, we could see the lateral rectus muscle and the medial rectus muscle bilaterally. And here you could see the optic nerve very well, where the bony orbits converge is referred to as the apex of the bony orbits. And that initiates or where that is the optic foramen, which initiates the start of the optic canal, which courses through. And if you follow these, where to go, you might be able to catch there's a sella turcica in there. Anterior clinoid processes right there, dorsum sella. Sella turcica is right in the middle. I'm trying to find the optic chiasm. It looks like it would be right here. A little hard to see. Might have been right above or below it. It's okay. Here we could see the superior rectus muscles, the lacrimal gland, as well as little lacrimal ducts, frontal sinuses up here. This is all the falx cerebri right here. All of these little guys are gyri, with sulci separating each gyri, whereas the fissures are deep rooted. So here we could see the occipital or posterior horns of the lateral ventricles. You could see them starting to converge. Here are the bodies of the lateral ventricles. Up top you have the anterior horns of the lateral ventricles, with the septum pellucidum separating them. In here we could see the choroid plexus right there. This is all the longitudinal fissure with the falx cerebri within it. Here we have the caudate and lentiform, or lentiform and caudate. I think it's this lentiform and caudate. You have the internal, external and extreme. You have like internal, external, and extreme capsules, which are really hard to see right there. Keep in mind, you also have lateral horns of the lateral ventricles. A little hard to see. Yeah, you can't really find them, but so yeah, here are the basal ganglia, lentiform and caudate nuclei. You have the internal, which would be like right here, I believe, external and extreme capsules right there. And yeah, that's really it for now. I'll see you soon.